2 Papa Alpha, runway 25, clear to land.
Runway 25, clear to land, 552 Papa Alpha.
Big salute to all of my military veterans out there, man. Big shout out to all of my subscribers and to all of my future subscribers, man. I definitely appreciate you guys, man, for subscribing to Student Pilot Blueprint. Man, I'm just here to share my experiences with you guys. I became a pilot last year, 2025, passed my check ride, and man, just been flying for fun, you know. I never looked at this like I'm going to do it for actual profession. You know, I just wanted to get up in the air and fly, you know. I'm a boater, I own a boat, so being out there on the river, it's nothing like it. And while I'm out on that river, I'm seeing these airplanes out there flying, and I'm like, man, I'm already out here on the river. I need to get up into the skies now, you know? So I live in Florida, man, and if you're not boating or flying, I don't know what you're doing if you're living in the state of Florida. So anyway, today we're going to discuss the 4 main reasons I feel student pilots fail. You know, by me being a student pilot, I'm a student pilot right now. Even though I got my private pilot license, I'm still a student to aviation. And I'm also going through my instrument rating. I already passed my FAA written exam. So right now I'm going through my instrument rating. And I'm telling you guys, I started out, you know, flying as a hobby. But now the more hours that I fly and get, you know, a log in my log book, I'm like, man, I'm taking a step closer to actually being able to monetize, you know, the training that I'm going through, you know. So monetize mean, hey, I might become a commercial pilot, airline transport pilot one day, who knows, you know. But right now, man, I just love doing what I do, and I love being a pilot as a hobby, you know. So like I'm telling you guys, I'm still a student pilot to aviation. So these are the 4 main failures I feel, you know, why student pilots will fail. And this is mostly, you know, strictly going towards, you know, the brand new student pilots right now. And I mean, of course, this is for anyone, you know, going through instrument rating, your commercial, your airline transport, you know. But the main reasons why I feel at the end of the day, you know, a lot of student pilots fail out is because, you know, these 2 are common. Everyone will tell you this, you know, everyone on YouTube is going to tell you, you know, the main reasons is money and the time, right? So yeah, I mean, I agree, you know, it takes money to become a pilot, you know. But before you guys get off into this, I suggest that you put the money to, you know, put your money that you're going to use to get your pilot license, go ahead and put that to the side. You know, put that into a separate, you know, bank account, and don't touch it. So whatever flight school is going to cost you, yeah, I understand some of you guys might not have the cash up front. Let's just say it cost me close to $28,000, right, to get my private pilot license. So I don't expect you guys to just put $28,000 up. Now, if you got that $28,000 right now, go ahead and put it to the side and don't touch it. But at least 25% of it, you know. So don't start your pilot license journey until you at least got 25% cash put aside for those flight hours. Because of what's going to happen is you're going to end up running out of money. And if you end up running out of money, then that's going to delay the process, right? It's going to take money for those flight hours and for that instructor fee. So for you guys, if you end up running out of money, then you come back, you know, months later or maybe even years later to try to get your pilot license, then you've really wasted that money, you know, up front, because you got to come back and retrain. Because I'm telling you guys, one thing about flying airplanes, if you look, I could go, sometimes I'll go 3-4 weeks without getting up in the air. And I'm not saying I'm getting in the airplane and I'm forgetting everything, but you have to kind of, you know, relearn the process again. You know, with me, I love flying on flight simulators. So even if I'm not physically flying the airplane, I'm still doing something on flight simulator, you know, weekly. So that's always keeping my brain sharp too. So when I go jump into that real airplane, things don't feel like, you know, it's brand new to me. But when I first started flight school as a student pilot, if I went 2 or 3 weeks, you know, without flying, man, it really did feel like, you know, I was forgetting things. Now, you know, I mean, I've been flying, so things come a little bit more natural, you know, to me now. So don't start flight school until you at least have 25% of the cash up front put to the side for your flight hours, and you really have a plan on completing it. So the next thing, once you get that time, once you get the money, it's all about the time. A lot of people don't have the time because I'm telling you, man, I done been through so many schools and trainings. I'm a college graduate from the University of Central Florida. And one thing about it is getting your pilot license is going to take more time really and effort than someone getting a bachelor's degree, even though it takes longer, of course, because that's how the school system is, you know, designed. But to get your pilot license is going to take focus. And I mean, so much focus that you might have to stop talking to certain people for the next few months until you complete that private pilot license. That's how focused you have to be, or you're going to be wasting your money. You know, like I'm telling you guys. So now we're wasting time and money. So a lot of people, this is where they're going to fail. They don't have the money, they don't have the time. Make sure you guys have the time. Don't get off into this and be like, yeah, I'm gonna be able to do it, you know, like once a week. No, you need to be flying at least 2 to 3 times a week. That's how I feel, or you're going to forget everything that you just learned, you know. So back to flight simulator, once I go out and fly, I'll come back home and really do everything that I just learned, you know, and I'll keep doing that until the next flight. And I'm telling you guys, man, if you don't fly on flight simulator, I don't really know what to tell you, you know, especially if you're a pilot. So flight simulator is one of those good, cheap tools, you know, that you guys could be using out here. Let's get off into this one right here. Not dedicated. I think that's the biggest thing. You could have the money and the time, right? And then once you start, are you dedicated? You have to be dedicated to this, you know, because I'm telling you guys out here, becoming a pilot, some people might think it's easy, you know, and I don't feel like you know, it's just super, super hard, you know, but it's challenging. You know, it's very challenging, you know, and this is what I love in life. I love to put myself through challenges. So that's why I became a pilot, because I knew it was going to challenge me, you know. Before I became a pilot, I really thought I couldn't become one, you know, to be honest with you guys. Like, I never said it out loud, but sometimes I thought about it in my mind, especially if I'm taking a commercial flight and I'm getting off the plane, about to go in a jetway, and I'm looking in the cockpit, and I'm like, man, look at, you know, the cockpits just look, you know, just so complicated to me. And I'd be like, man, how do they know where all of these buttons are and, you know, what to do? And I always used to think in my mind, like, man, I don't know if I'm, you know, that smart, you know? I don't know if I'm smart enough to become a pilot. So I had those thoughts in my mind at times, you know? So for me, I'm telling you guys out here, if you are not dedicated, once you start school, you're not going to complete it, you know, and I'm pretty sure there's plenty of people who had that time and money, and once they started, they're not dedicated, because I'm telling you guys, it's going to be a challenge. You have to learn, you know, so much in a short amount of time. You know, you have to learn. If you're not a multitasker right now, becoming a pilot is going to teach you, you know, how to become an expert at multitasking. You know, I thought my military background, you know, helped me to become a multitasker, which it did. It helped me. It prepared me, you know, for flight school mentally too. You know, I feel, you know, so big salute to the military once again. But anyway, becoming a pilot is going to teach you how to become an expert at multitasking. So you guys have to be dedicated. So once you start, I'm telling you, just keep going. It might feel like, you know, you're not learning something that day, or you can't pick up something. You know, there's a lot you have to learn on the ground. You have to learn a lot in the air, and you have to learn it, I'm telling you guys, in a short amount of time, to save you money, but to also keep it fresh in your mind for, you know, test and check rides too. So be dedicated. I think this is one of the main things right here outside of the first three. This is what I really want to talk about. I want to talk about how choosing the wrong CFI at your flight school could, you know, also potentially cause you to fail. So one thing about being a flight student is you're going to have to be trained by a CFI, certified flight instructor, right? And once you go start at that flight school, usually the time the school is going to pair you with a CFI, because you really don't know any of the CFIs, you know. And this is how I kind of came in. I didn't really, you know the questions, a lot of questions to ask, and, you know, should I be talking to different CFIs, you know, before I pick one. Maybe I just got lucky, you know, at my flight school too, you know. I don't know, my flight school is so amazing. There's nothing bad that I could say about them. Really, if I could give them a 10 out of 5, I'll give them a 10 out of 5, you know. So I'm definitely grateful for my flight school experience, and also to reflect on it, to be like, what would I have done, you know, differently if I was just coming off into this, you know, especially when we're talking about dedicating yourself to this flight school and this flight instructor. But I was kind of one of the lucky guys where everything just almost fell, you know, straight into my lap, you know, and I'm glad that it did that way. And there's some things that I did learn, you know, that I will share with you guys. But going back, if I was starting at a flight school right now, I'll be talking to every CFI. I'll be figuring out their personalities. I'll be asking them questions, you know. How many flight hours do you have? Some of these CFIs are straight from a Part 141 school, and now they became a CFI. Now they're working at a flight school, right? So do you want to go with that brand new CFI? Do you want to go with the experienced CFI who has, you know, a good amount of flight hours, you know, a good personality? I think the biggest thing too is, you know, you're going to be in the cockpit with that CFI that you have, you know, chosen. So you're going to be spending a lot of time with this CFI. It's like getting off into this big relationship, right? So you want to make sure that you choose the right CFI, you know, for you, who's going to fit you, you know, while you're in that cockpit, because you might not match up with every CFI. I'll give you guys my experience when it came to CFI. And this is why I'm telling you guys, I think I'm lucky because I was able to spend 90% plus of, you know, my flight hours with one CFI, you know. So, but I flew with 5 other different CFIs. So I'll tell you guys, with me, I'm glad that I was able to stick with that one CFI. Every time I, you know, switched and went to another CFI, I was always glad that I came back, you know, to my original CFI too, because I just liked how that CFI was. You know, he was a good CFI. He was very competent. You know, he was very confident, knowledgeable. Personality was awesome. And me and him, you know, just pretty much meshed or mixed, or we just, you know, instantly related, right? You know, he didn't talk a whole lot, you know, while I was flying. Sometimes I got into the cockpit with other CFIs and, you know, they start talking. They might start even talking about something off topic, you know, and here I'm a student, I'm trying to learn, I'm paying you guys a lot of money, you know, so man, just teach me what I need to know, you know, no side, you know, conversations at the moment. Save that, you know, we could do that on the ground or something before I leave. So I had some of those that like to, you know, talk a lot. I had some that like to grab the flight controls, you know, and I'm like, what's going on? Like, we're good. But they want to grab the flight controls real fast because maybe they're new and they're nervous. I don't know. But there was nothing unsafe going on at the time, how I felt. So I'm just saying there's going to be some CFIs that might be a little nervous. You know, I could tell some of those CFIs are nervous, and I would be too. You know, if I was a brand new CFI coming in and I'm flying with guys who don't know nothing about flying, yeah, I'm going to be nervous, but, you know, you can't always be, you know, reacting and grabbing, you know, the flight controls. So there's some CFIs out there that's going to be doing that to you know, too. So I just love, you know, my CFI because he'll sit back and let me mess up, and he'll let me correct myself, because as a pilot, you have to learn in your own mind how to correct yourself. You know, you can't be dependent on that CFI forever, you know, too. So I like my CFI because if it was something and if he really needed to take controls, he'll take controls, you know, but outside of that, he'll just sit back and let me, you know, mess up. As a student pilot, you're going to mess up, but you got to be able to figure out, how to correct yourself too. You know, what's going on, what's wrong, how do I fix it, how do I correct myself? You know, so I think this is a big one right here when we're talking about, you know, CFIs, because there are going to be some CFIs out here who are not really in it, you know, for the student. They're in it to, you know, just log as many hours as possible to get, you know, to their 1,500 hours. And that's just, you know, my honest opinion. Because if I was a CFI, hey, I'm trying to log hours too, right? You know, but you want to be a CFI that wants to log hours, but at the same time, you want to be the best CFI, the one that's really teaching and training your students. So ask that CFI, you know, how many students have they trained that actually passed their check ride? How many students have they trained that have, you know, failed their check rides? And that's a big thing. What if you're getting a CFI and he's telling you all, you know, 2-3 of my students just failed their check ride and 2-3 students passed? Now you're like, what's going on? You know, because at the end of the day, I do feel that the lessons that you're learning from your CFI, that's what's going to make or break you in that check ride. You know, when your CFI signs off to say that you're ready, you know, for that check ride, they're saying that, of course, they feel that you're ready to go take this exam, but I feel some CFIs are just still signing, you know, their students off, and they're not fully ready, you know? So make sure, you know, you're asking those type of questions. How many check rides have their students passed? How many check rides have their students failed? You know, ask them, hey, are you going to be, you know, on your way out of the door soon? Because if so, you don't really want to go with that CFI, because now you're spending time with him and maybe he might be on his way out the door, going to the airlines or going somewhere corporate flying, and you're going to get passed off to the next CFI. So I told you guys I flew with 5 different, you know, CFIs, and the only time I flew with those 5 different CFIs was because on the days I had scheduled, my CFI might have had something going on that day where, you know, I had to get paired up with another CFI. And there's times, you know, when he has something going on, when he'll say, hey man, I gotta change our schedule or whatever, then I'll just reschedule, you know, because once you start with that CFI, just go ahead and stick with them, you know. But if you get the opportunity to go and fly with other CFIs, go ahead and take that opportunity and fly with them. And maybe you might learn something from them. You know, I still think I learned something from all of those 5 other CFIs that I flew with, maybe, you know, one time. I still learned something from them, but I still love going back to my original CFI because I just love the way, you know, that I felt after every flight. And you guys want to feel good. Every time you come out of that air, you know, you want to feel good. You know, you don't want to come back feeling like a failure, like, hey, man, I can't get steep turns down. You know, I can't get power on, power off stalls. I can't get these maneuvers down. You want that CFI to help you build that confidence, you know, for every flight hour, every minute while you're out there, because it's costing you a lot of money and time, right? So it goes back to money and time and you being dedicated, you know, while you're up in that air with that CFI. So I think CFIs have a big, you know, part on why, you know, students are failing out here too, you know, but I still feel that most CFIs, once they become CFIs, they're going to be in it to, you know, of course, trying to help the flight student, because if I was a CFI, man, I want 100% pass rate. You know, that'll be my goal. And maybe one day I will become a CFI. You know, that's something else I think about now. It's like, man, I want to become a CFI because I love teaching and I love, you know, flying with those different CFIs, to be like, to have this feeling like, man, I feel one day if I become a CFI, you know, I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to really want to teach, you know, my flight students, and I want that 100% pass rate. Now, I know a student might get up in the air and they might get nervous that day, but I'm going to figure out how can I instill the most confidence into this flight student to make sure that I can achieve 100% pass rate, you know. So anyway, man, I just wanted to drop this video for you guys, how I feel, you know, student pilots fail. And this is something that you can start thinking about right now, especially if you're just coming off into aviation, you know. And if you guys have any questions, man, send me an email at studentpilotblueprint@gmail.com. And man, I'll see you guys on the next video. And like I tell you guys, if you guys are pilots right now or student pilots, man, fly safe and stay sharp.